All right,
Alrighty.
guys. My name's Dr. Cordy Williams, hashtag Megaphone Marine, hashtag 1776 Forever Free. Welcome to the weekly Recall Gavin Newsom. And we got some amazing things happening. Definitely had some great, awesome rallies the last couple of weekends. Just some updates. I was in Mar-a-Lago last night for a private event. Pretty amazing stuff going on. Some of you are bummed about the election. Hopefully all of you are bummed about the election and where it's at right now. Because I don't know why you would want to vote out Gavin Newsom and vote in Sleepy Joe, but that's a subject for a different day. But there's some really encouraging things happening with that. A lot of ballots that are missing that are red ballots, just so you know, and that's some inside information from people like Don Jr. and stuff like that. So lot of amazing stuff happening. That fight's not over yet. This fight's not over yet, and we got some amazing guests tonight. What I wanted to do is introduce our first guest, because she's going to kind of open with prayer for us, because just prayer for our country, prayer for healing. This young lady owns a Facebook group that has over 50,000 followers. Definitely a freedom fighter on the cutting edge of fighting for freedom. Miss Susan O'Connor, you have the floor, young lady.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm just going to open us in prayer. Lord, we thank you so much that you are sovereign and that you hold our tomorrows in your hand, and you have a plan and a purpose for everything. And your word tells us that you cause all things to work together for good. And so, Lord, we pray that we would experience your presence and your peace during this very tumultuous time. Lord, give us peace of mind, and also give us courage and hearts to work and serve to protect liberty and freedom for our brothers and sisters, and give us discernment on what we can do. Give us a supernatural discernment, Lord, an interest to see and to learn what it is that we can do to make a difference, Lord, because we know that your heart is for people to be free. Your heart is always for people to be free. And so, Lord, we pray for your blessing over this meeting and over our efforts and over our president. In your precious name, amen.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, Oren, do we want to give Susan the floor? Do you have anything that you wanted to say before she kind of tears into sharing what she's doing in the world with us?
Well, I am out in the desert right now. There's a lot of background noise, so if it's distracting, I'll mute myself for the rest of the call, but hopefully y'all can hear me right now.
You sound great.
Susan, thank you so much for that blessing. I just want to, we are all in a state of prayer right now. We are all on pins and needles, hoping for the right outcome for our country, our future. We're fighting for a future in our state and our country as a whole. And I just want to thank you for that. Susan O'Connor is, she's spearheading a project with Flip It Red. It's an amazing popular movement within California. We are moving in the right direction, folks. California, I believe, has a solid conservative core, and Susan will talk about that later. But if Kevin is on the call with us right now, I would like to go to him and Mike for their portion of the call, and then we'll have an open discussion later where we can ask questions with Kevin and hopefully interact with him as we go later into the call.
All right.
Before we get started introducing Kevin, want to say everybody here, and the fight, if you will, continues. There's an election that just happened. We don't know some of the outcome, but there's a lot of good things that happen in California. And thanks to things like Kevin Kiley's doing and we're doing with the recall, we are not letting go of California. And this is probably the most critical thing that is being done next to the presidential election in the country. And Kevin, before we even get started, for the group of us, there's probably close to 10,000 people watching this, really appreciate what you and Mr. Gallagher have done to help move the cause forward. And it's actually exciting on a day like this to be able to say that this isn't over, especially in the state where we reside. With that, I present someone, and Kevin, you don't know this, you and I share a little bit of quantum mechanics passion. We'll talk about that later. So I thought I'd throw that at you for a curveball. In the meantime, let's talk about state politics and what you've done, etc. And tell us the state of your case.
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity to join you, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been so supportive of our efforts with this court case. You know, the level of support that we've gotten from folks and encouragement and prayers has really just, you know, given us the strength to keep fighting and carrying this on, and to carry it to the point where we got this successful result just a couple of days ago. It was a little bit surprising, the timing, because, you know, we thought the trial was the 21st. We thought we'd get a ruling fairly quickly, and then it didn't happen. So we're thinking, well, maybe it's just going to be after the election. Then we got it the day before the election. So, but, you know, we'll take it because it was a great outcome. And the judge reached a very important decision, which is she issued a permanent injunction, or she's found good cause to issue a permanent injunction. It will become final in about a week. Which restrains the governor from further unconstitutional executive orders. And so, you know, we challenged one particular executive order in this case, because when you're in court, that's the way you have to do it. You can just challenge one order at a time, but the substance of the order wasn't really that important. I mean, it happened to relate to elections, and actually it did some very bad things with respect to elections. But the broader issue was about the governor's ability to exercise that kind of power, which, as he himself has argued, is autocratic power. The governor believes that because he has declared a state of emergency, California is transformed into an autocracy. He is the autocrat, and all powers of the state are in his hands. And that's not some rhetorical point I'm making. That is literally what the governor has argued in this case, and which he has indeed acted out in his total remaking of California life, you know, over the course of 8 months. So we argued that no, California is not an autocracy, even during a state of emergency. We're still a democratic society. We're still supposed to have representative government. We still have the rule of law, where the Constitution binds the governor. We still have checks and balances in the separation of powers. And the judge agreed with our argument. She struck down this particular executive order as unconstitutional. She said that several of the governor's other executive orders are unconstitutional for the same reason. And she issued a permanent injunction that basically ties his hands from issuing orders like this in the future.
Awesome. Not awesome that it happened, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I want to make sure to distinguish that point. Mike, do you have any questions for Kevin?
Not really questions. I'd like Susan to kind of maybe ask Kevin a couple questions. Susan's background is in voting and the kind of this whole ecosphere that she does here. And one of the things we like to do here is get these two to a chance to connect openly. Also, I did forget to mention tonight that we have the chat turned off except for the panelists can hear it because of things that happened last week that you're aware of. So if you have a question, put it on the question and answer board and we will try to get to them all tonight. Susan, do you want something? Are you unmute? Let me unmute you. Or please unmute yourself, Susan, and maybe ask Kevin a couple questions and how you think this affects basically the entire voting population of the state.
First of all, Mr. Kiley, I appreciate you so much and your service as an assemblyman and your just courage and fortitude in fighting for what you know is right. And my name is Sue. I just have a little Facebook group, and my passion is to encourage people to be equipped to help in the process. And so my questions to you will always be about what can we do to support you in what you're doing. Clearly, donations and things helping campaigns, but also what can we do in the field to actually impact, because I recognize that the Assembly and the Senate is, you know, we have a trifecta, we have a supermajority, and that makes it really tough for you guys who are the conservative Republicans, because you don't have much of a voice because you're outnumbered before anything even starts. And what we are recognizing is there's not even dialogue. There's not any debate. We know through AB5, which I think the recall really has a great standing with the AB5 folks, is because wasn't ever vetted. It should never have happened. We wouldn't have had to do the proposition we did this time if there was even discussion about that bill, because it was so clearly ridiculous. But that's my opinion. What my goal is with Flip It Red is to find out how regular people like me can participate to make our heroes like you more powerful in your seat. And I know that, one of the things that Mike and I talked about is voter registration, and how the Assembly and the Senate is a reflection of registration in California. And we need to get the no party preference people on board with our message. And so we need help with messaging too. And we want to find out how we can help you with messaging as you fight for what is good for California, but also as we think about the recall, because this is about the recall. What messaging, what ways can we reach these no party preference people so that they will engage with what they think is best for the state?
Well, thank you very much. That's a great question, and really appreciate the kind words. And I know Flip It Red and the recall groups, they've been just fantastic in helping to get the word out as we've been trying to do our part to fight. It's been the way that you're able to amplify the message is really, really important, because at the end of the day, that's, I think, just as important a check on the governor's abuses of power as the legally binding order we have is public opinion. Because this whole time the governor's sort of been, everyone knows that he's been ruling the state by decree, but maybe people don't understand that he doesn't have the right to do that. People might be of just the mind, well, I guess it's a state of emergency, so he can do whatever he wants. But now that we have a court order that says, no, you're not allowed to do that, we're not an autocracy under any circumstances, I think that's going to be a very powerful force to rein him in the future. So to the extent that you can help to get that message out, that the governor has actually been caught now, the court of law has said that he has abused his powers serially, time and time again, then that's going to be, I think, very important. But to your question about independent voters, NPPs, I'm glad you brought up AB 5, because everyone hates that law. The independents hate it, Republicans hate it, liberals hate it. I mean, if you look at like the freelancers group, it's mostly Democrats, and the freelancers against AB 5 was 20,000 people. And the reason is quite simple, that as much as we might disagree with liberals or Democrats or people of other party affiliations, most decent people don't like corruption. And that's exactly what AB 5 was. It was just sheer and simple corruption designed to enrich special interest groups that run our capital and put thousands, tens of thousands, maybe more than that, of people out of work in California. And that's continued even when the government has told people you're not allowed to go out and work during this whole state of emergency. So I think that the rejection of AB 5 by California voters by an overwhelming margin in the election yesterday is one of the most important things to happen in California politics in a long time. It's the people of this state standing up and saying, no, we're going to reject the corrupt law that the legislature perhaps ever passed. So the other point I'd add is, when it comes to these, the issues that we've been litigating in this lawsuit, things like the separation of powers and checks and balances in the Constitution and Republican government Republican with a small r, Republican representative government, these should be unifying ideas, right? These are the foundational principles of our country. Which is why to be honest with you, I've had a lot of people who tell me they're Democrats even who like that we're challenging the governor in this case because they feel like he's just aggregated and accumulated way too much power. So I think that, pitching the argument in terms of our foundational principles as a country and our Constitution and what should be a unifying set of principles and how the governor has, run roughshod over all of those, I think is a message that can attract people of all party affiliations.
So, Kevin, to that point, and this is Orrin Heatley here. I'm the lead proponent for the recall, and I appreciate everybody joining in the call, joining in this cause. And to your point, last week we had Andrea on as a guest speaker. Andrea was a lifelong Democrat, voted for Gavin Newsom, and literally named her child, her 9-year-old son, Gavin, after him because she had loved him. I know you laugh now. It's a tragic decision she made at the time, and she knows that, but she's really confident that her son is going to redeem his name at some point. But and I say this only as evidence of how far the pendulum has swung, and it's coming back the other way now. There are people that are jumping off and jumping on board with Flip It Red, with what you're doing, what the recall it means. And we have our own lawsuit that we filed a short time ago. And, people can watch that live on YouTube. The link is on our website, recallgavin2020.com. If you go down to the critical updates, you can find the link. You can watch the hearing live. It's in Department 17 in the Sacramento Superior Court at 11 o'clock. And anybody that wants to watch it can watch in live. The courts have already set a precedence, and they've granted extensions to 2 other statewide initiatives that are circulating the state right now. And under equal application of the law, we feel that we're entitled to the same courtesy. So I just want to tell you, God bless you for what you're doing. Thank you so much. And you're right. The pendulum is swinging the other way. This is a galvanizing movement. California has a conservative core. It's wandered away from its direction right now, but it's coming back into center. And that's where we need to be.
Kevin, I want to. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to add something I think that's very, very powerful before here. Susan, the group Susan has like 50, 60,000 members on it. I think our recall groups have maybe 150,000. Cordy's on a
no,
group.
Mike, you're short by 100,000. We're up to 225 to 250 now.
Excuse me. I sit corrected. Okay.
Well,
we got a lot of people.
You got to be
active. Thanks for the graphic. Okay. So, and Cordy there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people on this call. And I want to stress that you're a very powerful voice. You're becoming one in California. And the messages that you help us distribute in our group, because what you said is that it's really important. It's really important to us and to the governor that we know that your case is being watched. It's really important that the word gets out that it's being watched Friday. And I want to make sure that everybody who watches this on Facebook, the attendees we have today, it's not just reading a message. And Mr. Kiley or Kevin, if the more messages you give us from a powerful assembly person that we can spread throughout our groups, helps to spread your voice and helps really that gives us something to spread through social media. It shows that we are watching. And I don't think there's anything more powerful. We are going to convert the unconverted, the NPPs, those maybe that didn't vote last time, if we make them aware. So for everybody on this call outside of the panel, just be aware, okay? You have to not only read it, it's nice to share and comment within the group, but get to the other groups. Take what Mr. Kiley's going to send us that you see in Susan's group. Even what Oren says, just kidding, what Cordy says, 1776, and let's make sure we use that exponential power, like quantum mechanics, Kevin, all right, to get it out there, okay? Kevin, back to you.
No, we're very well said. Could not have said it better myself. To Oren's point, you look at the results of the propositions yesterday. Not only did voters, substantially overturn AB5, there were actually 3 other measures from the legislature that the voters rejected. The abolishing cash bail, the affirmative action, trying to bring that back, resoundingly rejected. The 17-year-olds voting. So that's actually 4 acts of the legislature that the people of California overwhelmingly rejected. And you also had other measures that the dominant special interest groups put on there, like going after Prop 13. And the kidney dialysis initiative, horrible initiative, the rent control initiative, which was a big Bernie Sanders thing. And voters have rejected those as well. And by the way, this is with the benefit of the Attorney General committing election fraud by, writing the ballot labels, basically letting the special interest groups write them for him. and abusing his power in that way. The people of California still said no.
Yeah, and actually Prop 15, which is as being in real estate and affects everybody, was one of my big pet peeves that really could have devastated the state. That's the one that would have literally probably risen the cost that we pay for everything and just further devastated small businesses. And the fact that our governor of California would support that, hey,
Right. Came out in favor of it. You're right.
yeah, way to pitch for the little guy. Who exactly is the little guy? You know, that's the part that I could go on, but I won't. Cordy, why don't you add a few words of wisdom from, I'm assuming it's a hotel room that you're at your suite in Florida.
Yeah, well, thank you, sir. No, I just really appreciate what you're doing, man, for the state, because certainly with what's going on nationally, and what's going on in our state, you know, like we've always said from the beginning, if we don't regulate this, I mean, we're the first, you know, besides New York, we're going to be the next socialist communist state, and in so many ways we are already. So it's comforting to know that even though we look blue on a map, we're not that blue, we're very red. And it really sounds like from what you're sharing that a lot of voters are starting to really vote that way, which is comforting. So thank you so much, brother. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
A couple things. Go ahead, Owen.
California has a conservative core. Remember, we're the ones who voted, the people voted for English as the official language of the state. We're the ones who voted for the sanctity of marriage. We're the ones who voted to maintain the death penalty and to streamline its process. And this governor single-handedly, unilaterally overrode the will of the people and disenfranchised 44 million voters when he made that executive order to dismantle the death chamber in California. Now, we do have, Susan is on, and I would like to allow her some airtime to talk with Kevin. So Mike, you and I have a tendency to
I want to
monopolize the airtime. So
right. I want to add one thing before they chat. Not that I've ever been accused of being too talkative. All right, maybe. But I want to really add something why we have this moment, because this answers one of the burning questions. All the initiatives, and I don't think there was any exceptions yesterday, made the ballot with 500,000 signatures. That's what they're required by law. And there were a lot of people paid a lot of money by a lot of special interest groups to get them on the ballot. We have collected today close to 750,000 signatures with volunteers. I really want that to sink home. Yes, it's not what we need. Yes, we hope to get what we get with the 90-day extension. But for everybody out there asking that burning question, understand we have collected enough to put an initiative in the half on the ballot. All right. So I know, Kevin, that sinks in with you, knowing numbers of votes that you get in a district, et cetera, and I'll defer to Susan. But that's one of the burning questions we're asked every week. We did a big total for the court case. Now, you two chat, and I'll try to shut up. And I'll mute Lauren.
Well, one thing that I want to express to you, Mr. Kiley, is how much the people in the Flip It Red group appreciate you and Mr. Gallagher in going the extra mile and really fighting in court for us. We really appreciate it. And definitely we have amplified the message, as you say, and that's something that we will continue to do, is to amplify the message. And
thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody who runs for office and who serves in office, and especially in California, especially as a conservative, because it's not an easy job, and we just really appreciate you. And my goal and my heart is to help us to support you more effectively. And so I would love to be able to have a two-way conversation to hear from you and the other assembly members and the other Senate members to update us in some format that allows us to amplify the messages that you need in the time frame that you need. So I hope to connect with you and be able to develop that in a way that's effective.
Yeah, and I love how you said, I mean, it should absolutely be a two-way street, because we want, what we're doing at the Capitol to ultimately represent, what the folks like your group are looking for. It's our job to represent you. And I think that one of the big problems with this state is you get legislators just go to the Capitol and then forget about the people they're supposed to represent, right? They get really chummy with the special interest lobbyists who live in the very close proximity right across the street from the Capitol, and then that becomes their only constituency, and that's who they're there to serve, essentially. I mean, I see it happen. It's not pretty. And what is lost, I mean, even before Gavin Newsom's one-man rule this year, is, government by the people had really become, a semblance of what us, barely resembled what it's supposed to be. So if I could accomplish one thing in my time in office, it would be to try to revive the ideas of self-government and government of, by, and for the people that our country is supposed to be all about, and it's why I've been just so particularly horrified by what's happened this entire year, because it's taken all of the worst tendencies of politics in our state and just put them on steroids. It's like Gavin Newsom is the personification of all of these problems. The guy just does whatever the biggest special interest group tells him to do. That's why he shut down all the schools, because the CTA told him to do it. That's why he signed AB 5, because the powerful union conglomerates told him to do it. But I mean, this year, we've had such limited opportunities for the public to be involved in our government, and now there's none at all, because Gavin Newsom just makes laws with the stroke of a pen. And when you look back at the founding of our country, we get this argument, well, it's an emergency, we have to give him as much power as he wants. It's like our founders actually were pretty familiar with emergencies. They just gone through a revolution, and they were also familiar with autocracies. They just broken away from a monarchy. Yet they made very specific choices about the way our government was going to work. And this experiment with self-government, which has been the most successful experiment in the history of politics and the history of the world, has worked pretty well through every manner of emergency you can imagine. And yet at our trial, in his closing statement, the attorney for Governor Newsom actually said that our ideas about separation of powers only work well in theory. That's actually what he said.
No way.
So, the flip side of this is, flip it red, no pun intended, is that, we, in as much as this year has come to epitomize all of the problems with California, it has given millions of people a window into the situation in a way they did not have before. And I think that therein lies the possibility for fundamental political change in this state, is because you have the ability to make the case that the very things that have led this year to be so insufferable are also the same things that have caused California to go downhill for so long.
I have a question for you that you may or may not be able to answer, but I know it's something that's on everybody's heart this evening. And that is, how is it, and again, I realize this is not your specialty and you may not be able to answer it, but because you're in government, you probably have information from places that aren't as accessible to us. Everybody's pretty upset that they called the election right when the polls closed. And that they said that there were so many ballots, even though they're still counting. They hadn't even started the in-center counting. So do you have any sort of explanation that passes the smell test on that?
I don't, and I kind of had the same reaction watching this. They honestly, it seems to happen in other states too, where the networks will literally call it like 2 seconds after the polls close. I don't really know how that works, but that isn't actually the official result. It's just the media using their methods to say what they think is going to happen.
Good. So just to clarify for everybody that's listening, the results that they heard on the news were not from the state of California. Those were from the media. The state of California did not call the results at that time.
Well, and I challenge anybody on this call, or anybody that watches it in the future, to raise their hand if they've ever heard a poll that was in favor of Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, we know this battle is not over yet. And I appreciate that question, but you know, these are tense times for our nation. They really are, because we know what's at stake. Cordy?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, well, there's two national polls. Trafalgar was the one that predicted Trump would win in 2016. There's another one as well. You know, I don't know where they stood in the last 24 hours, but his predictions have been pretty much on point. What I will say is, you know, it's not over yet. They're finding ballots that are filled out with Sharpie markers. There are videotapes of pollsters that I know have gotten to the president, because I have some friends that are pushing some of that, like literally ballots that are coming in basically ice chests. Pollsters, there's videotapes of pollsters, the kind of watchers for the Trump campaign, not being allowed to go into the polling locations, being locked out. I mean, there's some scandalous, disgusting communist stuff happening right now that has happened. And then the ballots have been put through 3 different times in some cases. And there's 140,000 ballots that are Republican Trump ballots that are filled out for Trump that haven't been counted yet in one state. And I can't remember which one. So Trump is still in the running. And that should be comforting to all of us, you know, for a bunch of reasons, because obviously we're concerned about California. But you know, it's kind of chicken or egg, right? We want California to flip, but we also at some point, and we want to get Gavin out, but we also want the nation to not be in socialism.
We want a healthy nation. And
Yeah.
with that message, I encourage everybody to stay on their toes and stay tuned. So Kevin,
I have a question for Kevin here.
So do I.
That's fine. Hold on. Stand by. Kevin, if you have a few moments, I would like to allow for a Q&A session at the end of the call. Or do you have a moment
absolutely.
or two? Okay. So with that, Robin McCray is on the phone with us right now, or on the call with us. And I would like to just go over where we stand with our numbers and what we're doing as we go forward. We have our own court case that we're fighting in the Superior Courts in California. And I just want to go over that for 2 minutes. Robin, give us the raw numbers if you have them.
Well, the raw numbers, we keep a master spreadsheet, and our authorized personnel throughout the state turn in their counts every week. And the raw numbers, we have about 685,000, but I know there are several people that have called me, and they have counts that are coming in from various areas of their county. Including you, Mr. Heatley. I can't even guess how many are in that trailer after the rallies and the run through the state. But I know we're at about 687,000, and based on what I'm hearing is in the field, we're easily at 700,000, and that's what we've been informed of. I have a gentleman that calls me out of the clear blue from San Bernardino. He has to be in his 80s. This man is out collecting signatures on his own. He found my number. He called me. I just got over 100 signatures from him. There are people that are out there that are doing this, and we just need to get the word out to them now that it's time to start turning those signatures in quickly. But I can say that we're at 700 to 750 by the time these stragglers come in. Still a lot of work to do, but pretty incredible with what we've done. If you look at the percentage of volunteers basis the population of the voting members in each county, registered members. So I just like to say I am so proud of this volunteer team and the time they've given, the energy they've given, the passion and the dedication through the heat, the smoke, and we're coming upon the cooler weather. So thank you. But those are the raw numbers. And I know there are more out there that we just aren't yet aware of.
And my God, Robin, you nailed it on the head. I know our volunteers are tired. We need an infusion of new volunteers. There are people out there, and I'm getting calls every day now. How can I help? How can I help? What do I need? And I tell them how they can start circulating. I guide them to and I just lost my lighting. I'm sorry for that, everybody, but the battery died on my backlight.
You actually look better. You look better, Oren.
But I just want to let everybody know that there are people joining the team every day as we go forward to help with this cause. And, you know, it's an incredible thing that we're doing. It's monumental. But if we get this extension, and I'll turn around here, maybe get some lighting from the traffic. Nope, that doesn't work, does it? But what I'm saying is that, you know, there are people out there every day. We're gaining new volunteers. We're getting new people to the field. And, you know, the momentum is growing. We have a court case that's going to grant us an extension to be able to continue gathering signatures clear in through March, folks. So don't give up, and know that your efforts are not in vain. So if you want to make this happen, dig your heels in, continue the fight, and keep moving forward. And with that, because I've lost my batteries and my video, I'm about to lose my audio. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike. The rest of the show is yours.
Shocking. Dan, I know Dan's one of our other executive board members behind the scenes, and Kevin and Susan, he has some questions for you. So I'm going to do what I rarely do, concede the floor. Dan, why don't you ask Kevin? And by the way, before I even do that, Kevin, there's a million questions for you. And apparently, if you were to run for governor tonight, just to let you know, you've got at least probably about 8,000 votes well on your way.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah,
So
we got to start somewhere. Dan, go ahead and ask what you're going to ask. I know you're dying to ask a few questions there.
That's all right. I got a few questions for Kevin. Let's see. This is coming out of the, this is coming from the people. So the court order that you just won, does it affect only moving forward, or does it affect everything also in the past? And the second part of this is, how does this affect the case of the Grace Community Church versus Gavin Newsom?
Yeah, so about the moving forward versus backwards, that's a good question, and a lot of people have asked me that. So in terms of what the injunction specifically does, it restrains him moving forward. And I think I saw someone in the comments says, well, what happens if he just decides to go ahead and issue these unconstitutional orders anyway? Well, then he could be subject to a contempt action. If you disobey a court order, then you could potentially be held in contempt. So that has real teeth to it. Now, as far as the past orders, because he's issued, 58 executive orders now, the judge said specifically in the opinion that Newsom has violated the Constitution in the same way with many of his previous orders. And I would, say that just on the face of it, it could be up to half of them that are invalid or should be invalidated for the same reason as this particular order in this case was. So I didn't have the chance to finally, James and I talked about it earlier today, and we haven't reached any definite conclusions about what we're going to do. But one option is we might just highlight which of the pre-existing orders we think are no longer valid and should be withdrawn immediately under the terms of this decision once it becomes effective. It becomes effective, I believe, in 8 days now. Then we'll go from there. And of course, it'd be a very easy matter to bring another suit if he refuses to comply with respect to any particular order. Now, I want to address, because I know a lot of people want to know, well, how does this affect things like the lockdown scheme and the school closure orders and that sort of thing? So it will not have any immediate effect on that. There was one possibility in the case where if the judge had ruled the Emergency Services Act itself to be unconstitutional, then that would have immediately terminated the state of emergency. That's actually what happened in the state of Michigan. Their state Supreme Court ruled the whole act to be unconstitutional. So all of the emergency orders were immediately null and void. And that it was one of the options for the judge in this case, although we always thought it was probably the least likely one for the initial trial court. But if the case does go up on appeal, which we think the governor is likely to appeal, then that could be an argument that comes into play again before the appellate court and the Supreme Court. But you look at what the injunction says. That so then the next question you might ask is, all right, beyond kind of the low-hanging fruit of the maybe 24 or so orders that exercise legislative power in the same way that this order did, is there any argument that this injunction could bind the governor from further business closures or further school closures or that sort of thing? And that, I think, is an interesting question, because the term that the judge uses in the injunction is that the governor cannot create any new statutory laws or legislative policy. And so what does that mean? Legislative policy, which is, a term that's actually in the order. If the governor is making very specific decisions as to if you're a salon, you can be open, but if you're a restaurant, you can't under these circumstances, is that considered legislative policy in a way that might fall within the language of the injunction? I'm not prepared right now to sort of say I've kind of done the due diligence on that to say how persuasive of a legal argument I think it would be, but I think it does raise the question. And if not as a matter of law, then I think as a matter of what the public is going to start asking for is the public, I think, is going to be newly awakened to the harms of simply having everything done by a single person without having any opportunity for a legislative process, for deliberation, for input from stakeholders, and most of all, for the public to actually be involved in the process itself. So I think that, some people might say, well, the California legislature, are they going to do a whole lot of better job than Newsom will? I mean, we have a super duper majority, but at the very least, when there's a process, he can't just do whatever he wants immediately, and then it's done and our lives are upended as a result.
Kevin, that actually brings up something I was going to ask you earlier before Dan goes to the next question. Although they're the opposing party and they do have a supermajority, my sense as a benign civilian is he's even extremely ticked off for family viewing. His own state assembly and Senate who are saying, hello, we're out here and you're making, is that the sense that you get from some of your fellow assembly people?
It's a little mixed. So I think there's many who just are enjoying the extended vacation. I mean, the leadership of the legislature has basically taken the year off. That they adjourned for 12 weeks during COVID when it first started. And now for the last 4 months of the year, the legislature's recessed. And so it's been just incredible how much they've dropped the ball. In fact, it's interesting in one of the briefs in the case, the governor went after us saying, well, in Michigan, the legislature joined the lawsuit, but here it's just you and Gallagher. So, we're like, well, yeah, we agree with you. Our legislature's been useless, but, it's fallen upon us as two members of the super duper minority to actually defend the institutional prerogatives of the legislature. But to your point, so there are a couple people who have been outspoken on the other side. Phil Ting, who's the assembly budget chair, he actually decried the complete authority. The governor's acting has the complete authority to do whatever he wants. Holly Mitchell, who is the state senator, the Senate budget chair, she said in this letter, it was like a very scathing letter to the governor saying, time and again, we've told you to work with the legislature. Instead, you just do whatever you want and then expect us to rubber stamp it. So there've been two people who have been pretty outspoken. Others have spoken to me kind of privately, like, oh, we're glad that you're doing something, that sort of deal. Of course, don't have the courage to say so publicly. But all in all, the response of the legislature has been really disappointing. I mean, it's Newsom who's taken the sledgehammer to our representative government, but the legislature's been his willing accomplice in a lot of ways by not having any willingness to stand up to him. Oh, and by the way, as far as the state of emergency goes, I am the author of a resolution to terminate the emergency, which I introduced, and Gallagher's the joint author of it. We introduced that in, it was like April, maybe early May. And so the legislature does have the power to terminate a state of emergency, but they've just sat on it. They haven't given the committee hearing, nothing's happened from it.
Mike, did you want to move to questions, brother? Or do you have?
I think we've answered a lot. We're about 7:30 on most of the questions of this. Let me, if you don't mind me summing it up.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been a long night for everybody last night. I want to say this. Yes, we're about halfway there. We have to continue driving, even if we only have 17 more days. We expect to find out on Friday what's going to happen. But as you can see, and I really, if Kevin Kiley can fight in his own house as a super minority and take on the court, for all of us out there, we the people have to fight to get our state back. This man and people like Susan are put their careers and lives on the line to fight for us. May I ask that we continue to fight for them and all fight together. We have about 750,000 signatures. It's amazing. It's not what we need. We expect to find out Friday if we're going to get the extension. But let me tell you something. The election's over last night. We're waiting the results, but the battle is still going on. So that's kind of really all I've got tonight. We know what we need to do. We know that a vote in an election, Mayor, we don't know how it ends up. We will know how this recall ends up. That's the crux of the question tonight. The others are technical. For Kevin Kiley, way above my pay grade. I don't even play a lawyer on TV. But what I can tell you is this. I do know something about quantum mechanics. We'll talk later. But what I can tell you is this, that we the people from Florida, where you're at today, to from Northern California, to all the way down to Imperial Beach, are going to do this. And Susan, thank you very much for everything you do. Please, Kevin, get us messages that we can get out through social media. All the questions that you have, folks, we want to communicate and get answered, but scoreboard is in the end of the day. We got a mission.
All right. Well, the last thing I would say is, we said originally November 7th, if you want to mail in ballots, just in general, I would, if you have any now, ballots, if you want to mail in signatures, go ahead and please do that. Like we always say, 2 million is what we're going for. We'll take 1.5. But you guys are amazing. We all appreciate you so much. Kevin, Susan, Robin, Mike. That's pretty much it for this week. We might have something happening this week. My group, 1776 Forever Free, on Sunday. We're making some serious calls. We might be doing another march in Washington, D.C., but we'll be putting stuff out about that, radio ads, publicity stuff. If it does happen, go ahead, Mr. Netter.
Friday. We are open and transparent. Remember what Kevin said, Mr. Kevin Kiley. We have to be watching. If you get on our email list and go to our Facebook group, you have seen the link to watch this hearing live and will know at the moment we do how this is going to end up. We need to be watching. Please watch the hearing with us on Friday. Let's see how good a job the lawyers do. Let's hope and pray that the decision goes our way. Friday is our next big date. Do not wait till next week to find out what's going on. I know Mr. Kiley is going to be watching with rapt attention. He's got nothing else to do. Okay, but everybody participate. That's good. Robin, do you want to add anything?
Well, there are a lot of people that have asked about having a rally in Sacramento like we did in Sutter at the courthouse. So it would be really nice. We will post that for so many that want to take part and make a presence and show that this is an important critical move for the state and for the recall. So we will post that to our homepage where we may be able to assemble if that's something we can pull off.
Perfect. And along those lines, Sue's on Flip It Red and Facebook. And I got that right, Susan?
It's there, Flip It Red, California.
Flip It Red, California. And Kevin, I'm also asked, outside of handing out your home phone number, which we posted tonight, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I've got the blog that I post to periodically. It's called Capital Quagmire with a Q, so Quagmire, kind of to describe our state of affairs in Sacramento. And you can, if you subscribe to my email list too, then you can just reply to any of my emails and I get those. Sometimes takes me a few days to reply to them, but I do try to get back to everyone who emails me.
All right. in that case, I'm gonna close this down, Mr. Mike. God bless you guys. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you next week at 6:45. Semper Fi.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thanks, guys.
Good night now. God bless.